"Order! I said order in this court!" Judge Nicholas Sinclair roared, his gavel striking the mahogany like a gunshot, but the sound was swallowed by the wail of a mother breaking. "You don't see me, Nick! You never saw me!" Brooke Valentine screamed, her hands gripping the defense table, tears cutting through the layer of exhaustion on her face. "Remove the defendant!" Nicholas commanded, his face a mask of billionaire indifference. "You can't remove the truth!" A young man's voice boomed from the gallery. 3 figures stood up in unison. 3 faces, identical. Black triplets, 2 in worn hoodies, 1 in silk, staring down the man on the bench. The boy in the middle pointed a shaking finger at the judge. "You call yourself the law? You're about to sentence your own flesh and blood to prison for a crime your fiancé committed." The air in the Armstrong mansion smelled of expensive lilies and old money, a scent that always made Brooke Valentine's stomach turn, but she needed this job. The catering gig for Daphne Armstrong's engagement party paid triple the standard rate, and with Riley's tuition for pre-law due and Hendrix's beat-up sedan needing a new transmission, Brooke couldn't afford pride. She adjusted the collar of her stiff black server's uniform, wiping a bead of sweat from her forehead. The kitchen was a chaotic symphony of clanging pots and shouting chefs, but Brooke moved with the grace of a woman who had carried the weight of the world on her shoulders for 20 years without buckling. "Brooke! Champagne flutes, table 4. Now!" the floor manager barked. "On it," Brooke said, her voice steady. She grabbed the tray, checking her reflection in the stainless steel fridge. She looked tired. Gray was beginning to streak her temples, reclaiming the dark curls she usually kept pinned back. But her eyes, warm, amber, defiant, were the same as they had been 2 decades ago. She pushed through the swinging doors into the ballroom. It was a sea of diamonds and tuxedos. In the center of the room stood Daphne Armstrong, a woman whose beauty was as sharp and cold as a scalpel. She was wearing a dress that cost more than Brooke's life earnings, and around her neck hung the Star of the South, a vintage diamond necklace rumored to be worth $2 million. Daphne was laughing, her hand resting possessively on the arm of a tall, imposing man with silver fox hair and a jawline that could cut glass. Brooke froze. The tray in her hand rattled, the crystal flutes shivering against each other. Nicholas Sinclair, the billionaire judge, the man who was currently plastered on every billboard in the city running for the state Supreme Court. And the man who, 20 years ago, had been nothing but Nick, the passionate law student who had promised her the world before vanishing into the fog of his family's expectations. He looked right through her. He literally looked at the tray of champagne, took a glass, and didn't even register the woman holding it. It was a special kind of invisibility reserved for the help. Brooke lowered her head, backing away, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She had to leave. She had to get her pay and get out before— "My necklace!" The shriek tore through the ambient jazz music like a siren. The room went silent. Brooke turned. Daphne Armstrong was clutching her bare throat, her eyes wide with theatrical panic. "It's gone! The clasp was loose. I took it off for 1 second in the powder room to adjust it, and now it's gone!" Daphne's eyes scanned the room, bypassing the wealthy guests, the politicians, and the tycoons, landing squarely on Brooke, who was near the service exit. "Her!" Daphne pointed a manicured finger. "The help! She was just in the hallway!" Security descended before Brooke could even breathe. "Ma'am, please empty your pockets," a burly guard demanded, grabbing Brooke's arm with unnecessary force. "I didn't touch anything," Brooke said, her voice trembling but firm. "I was serving drinks." "Empty them!" Daphne screeched, marching over. "She's been eyeing me all night. I saw the way she looked at Nicholas and me. Jealousy. Pure lower-class jealousy." "Daphne, calm down," Nicholas said, his voice deep and bored. "Let security handle it." "I won't calm down. That necklace is a family heirloom. Daphne lunged, grabbing Brooke's apron. "Get your hands off me!" Brooke shouted, shoving Daphne's hand away. As the apron tore, something heavy and glittering fell from the hidden lining of the pocket, clattering onto the marble floor. The Star of the South. Brooke gasped, backing away. No, I didn't put that there. She planted it." The room erupted in gasps. Nicholas walked forward, looking down at the necklace, then up at Brooke. For a second, just a split second, recognition flickered in his ice-blue eyes. But it was quickly replaced by disgust. "Call the police," Nicholas said coldly. 2 hours later, the holding cell at the 4th Precinct was freezing. Brooke sat on the metal bench, her head in her hands. She hadn't cried. She refused to cry. "Mom!" The voice cracked with panic. Brooke looked up to see her twins, Riley and Hendrix, rushing toward the bars. They were 20 years old, a striking pair. Riley Valentine was fierce, her hair in long braids, wearing a Future JD hoodie. Hendrix Valentine was broader, his eyes harder, wearing a mechanic's jumpsuit stained with grease. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" Hendrix demanded, gripping the bars, his knuckles turning white. "I'm fine, baby, I'm fine," Brooke lied, reaching through to touch his face. "They're charging you with grand larceny, Mom," Riley said, her voice shaking with rage. "They're saying you stole Daphne Armstrong's necklace. The bail is set at $50,000. We don't have that kind of money." "I didn't do it, Riley. You know I didn't." "We know," Hendrix spat. "That witch Armstrong framed you. I saw the news. They're already painting you as some desperate career criminal." "Who's the judge?" Riley asked, her mind already working like the lawyer she wanted to be. "Depending on the arraignment judge, we might get ROR." Brooke swallowed hard. She looked at her children, the children Nicholas Sinclair didn't know existed. "It doesn't matter who the judge is." "It does," Riley insisted. "I checked the docket on the way over. It's a high-profile case involving a public figure, so they expedited it to the Superior Court Division." Riley checked her phone and froze. Her face went ashen. "What?" Hendrix asked. "Who is it?" Riley looked up at her mother, terror in her eyes. "It's Judge Sinclair, Nicholas Sinclair." Brooke closed her eyes, feeling the walls of the cell closing in. "Of course it is," she whispered. "Of course it is." "The billionaire?" Hendrix scoffed. "Great. A rich guy judging a poor woman for stealing from another rich woman. We're cooked." "No," Riley said, straightening her spine. "We fight. I'm going to get you a public defender, and I'm going to do the legwork. We're going to prove she planted it." "Riley, stay away from them," Brooke warned sharply. "Stay away from the Armstrongs and stay away from Sinclair." "Why?" Riley asked, confused by the intensity in her mother's voice. "Because power like that crushes people like us," Brooke said, omitting the truth that would shatter their world. "Promise me." Riley didn't answer. She just squeezed her mother's hand. "I promise I'll get you out." The chambers of Judge Nicholas Sinclair were less of an office and more of a fortress of solitude. Located on the top floor of the courthouse, the room was soundproofed against the pleas and cries of the hoi polloi below. Nicholas stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out over the city skyline. He adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke Italian suit. He was a man of precision. His life was a spreadsheet of assets, liabilities, and judgments. Emotions were variables he had eliminated long ago. "You seem distracted, darling." Daphne Armstrong lounged on his leather sofa, sipping an espresso. She looked entirely unbothered by the theft from the night before. Nicholas turned. "The optics of this are messy, Daphne. My fiancé accusing a catering staff member of grand larceny in my jurisdiction right before the election." "She had the necklace in her pocket, Nick," Daphne said, checking her nails. "It's an open and shut case. Besides, it shows you're tough on crime. Even when the victim is your future wife, you remain impartial. It's a good narrative." "I should recuse myself," Nicholas muttered. "Don't you dare!" Daphne snapped, her veneer cracking instantly. "If you recuse, they'll get some bleeding-heart liberal judge who will give her a slap on the wrist because of her socio-economic struggle. I want her in prison, Nick. She ruined my engagement party." Nicholas looked at Daphne. He didn't love her. He knew that. It was a merger, not a marriage. The Sinclair fortune and the Armstrong political influence. A dynasty. "Why do you care so much about this specific woman?" Nicholas asked, narrowing his eyes. Daphne flinched, just barely. "I don't like thieves, and I don't like the way she looked at you." Nicholas paused. The woman. Brooke Valentine. The name had nagged at him all morning. He remembered a Brooke from his college days, a scholarship student, vibrant, full of life. They had a summer that felt more real than the 20 years that followed. But that Brooke had disappeared. His father had told him she took a payoff to leave him alone. He had hardened his heart that day, convinced that everyone had a price. This woman in the catering uniform looked worn, beaten down. It couldn't be the same person. The Brooke he knew would never end up serving drinks at a party. She was going to be an artist. "I will review the preliminary evidence," Nicholas said dismissively. "If the evidence holds, justice will be served. Now leave me. I have a docket to clear." Daphne stood up, smoothing her dress. She walked over and kissed him on the cheek. It felt cold. "Make sure she goes away for a long time, Nick, for both our sakes." As she left, Nicholas sat at his desk and opened the file marked State versus Valentine. He stared at the mugshot attached to the file. It was a defiant face. The eyes burned with a silent rage that unsettled him. He flipped the page to her bio. Brooke Valentine, age 42, single mother, 3 children. The report listed 2 dependents at her address. Riley and Hendricks Valentine. Where was the third? He rubbed his temples. Why did he care? He was a judge. Facts were all that mattered. The necklace was in her pocket. There were witnesses. It was simple. He picked up his gold fountain pen, the weight of it familiar and comforting. He had built a career on being decisive, on cutting away the rot. "You made a mistake coming into my world, Miss Valentine," he whispered to the empty room. Suddenly, his intercom buzzed. "Judge Sinclair? There are 2 individuals here to see you. They claim to be the defendant's children. They're refusing to leave security." Nicholas sighed. "Send them away. Ex parte communication is forbidden." "They say they have evidence the police ignored, sir. And, well, the young lady is quite persistent. She's citing case law at the guards." Nicholas raised an eyebrow. "Citing case law?" "Yes, sir." Nicholas checked his watch. He had 10 minutes before his lunch meeting. Curiosity, a dangerous thing, pricked at him. "Let them up. I'll give them 2 minutes to realize they're wasting their time." Riley and Hendricks stepped into the judge's chambers, looking wildly out of place in their thrift store clothes against the backdrop of mahogany and marble. But Riley walked with her chin up, clutching a manila folder like a shield. Hendricks stayed a step behind her, his eyes scanning the room for threats, his posture defensive. Nicholas didn't stand up. He remained seated, rotating his chair to face them. "You have 2 minutes," Nicholas said, his voice void of warmth. "And be aware, anything you say can be used against your mother." "We don't want your pity," Riley started, her voice shaking slightly before she steadied it. "We want you to look at the timeline. The police report says the necklace was stolen at 8:15 p.m. My mother was clocked into the kitchen inventory system at 8:14 p.m., scanning out a case of champagne. The server logs are digital. They can't be faked." She slammed a printout onto his pristine desk. Nicholas glanced at the paper. It was a chaotic spreadsheet, but Riley had highlighted the timestamp. "Daphne Armstrong claims she was in the hallway at 8:15, Hendricks added, his voice deep and rough. But the hallway CCTV cameras were conveniently malfunctioning for exactly 10 minutes between 8:10 and 8:20. "Doesn't that seem convenient to you, Your Honor?" Nicholas looked at the boy. Hendricks had a jawline that looked hauntingly familiar. The aggression in his eyes. It was the same look Nicholas used to see in the mirror when he was young and angry at his father. Equipment malfunctions happen, Nicholas said, dismissing the feeling. And digital logs can be erroneous if a different staff member used her badge. My mother doesn't let anyone use her badge, Riley argued. She is meticulous. She didn't steal that necklace. Daphne Armstrong planted it because she hates her. Why would my fiancé hate a catering woman she's never met? Nicholas asked, his tone sharpening. That's what we're trying to find out, Riley shot back. But you're the judge. You have the power to subpoena the full security grid, not just the hallway cameras, the internal motion sensors. Prove the timeline. Nicholas leaned forward. You are a law student? Pre-law, Howard University, Riley said. Scholarship. Nicholas nodded slowly. Impressive. But this is not a classroom, Ms. Valentine. In the real world, possession is 9/10 of the law. Your mother was found with the goods. Unless you have a video of Daphne Armstrong putting it in her pocket, you have nothing but conjecture. He stood up, signaling the meeting was over. My clerk will show you out. You're making a mistake, Hendricks said, stepping forward. You think you're better than us because you sit in that chair. But if you send an innocent woman to jail, you're no better than the criminals you sentence. Get out, Nicholas said softly, but with a terrifying authority. Riley grabbed Hendricks's arm and pulled him back. Come on, Hendricks, he's not listening. He's part of the system. As they turned to leave, Nicholas watched them go. He felt a strange thrumming in his chest, a physical discomfort he couldn't name. He looked at the timestamp Riley had left on his desk. 8:14 p.m. If Brooke was in the kitchen, she couldn't have been in the hallway. He picked up the phone. Get me the security firm that handles the Armstrong estate. I want the raw server data, not the report, the raw data. Outside the courthouse, the sun was blinding. Riley and Hendricks sat on the concrete steps, defeated. He's not going to help, Hendricks said, kicking a soda can. He's marrying the witch. He's probably in on it. We need to go back to the scene, Riley said, wiping her eyes. The Armstrong estate. There's a back entrance for staff. Maybe we can find a witness the police didn't interview, a gardener, a maid, someone. That's trespassing, Rye. I don't care. Mom is sitting in a cell. They took the bus to the wealthy district, a journey that took 40 minutes and crossed two distinct economic worlds. When they arrived at the gates of the Armstrong estate, it was buzzing with activity. Florists were arriving for yet another event. Blend in, Riley whispered. She pulled her hair up and took off her hoodie, revealing a plain black t-shirt. Hendricks did the same. They slipped through the open service gate while the guards were checking a delivery van. They crept through the manicured gardens, heading toward the kitchen entrance. Who are you? The voice was soft, startled. Riley and Hendricks froze. They turned around. Standing near a rose bush holding a sketchbook was a girl. She was wearing a pale yellow sundress that cost more than Hendricks's car. She looked delicate, refined, and terrified. But that wasn't what made Riley's heart stop. It was her face. The girl had Riley's eyes. She had Riley's nose. She had the exact same curl pattern in her hair, though hers was styled with expensive products. The girl stared back, dropping her sketchbook. It was like looking into a funhouse mirror. One wealthy, one struggling, but undeniably, biologically identical. Who are you? The girl whispered again, her voice trembling. I'm Riley, Riley stammered, stepping forward. This is Hendricks. We're Brooke Valentine's children. The girl's face went pale. Brooke Valentine? The woman who stole from my mother? Your mother? Hendricks asked, confused. Daphne is your mother? Yes, the girl said. I'm Taylor Armstrong. Riley looked at Hendricks, then back at Taylor. The resemblance wasn't just close. It was absolute. No, Riley whispered, a terrifying realization dawning on her. Daphne isn't your mother. Look at us, Taylor. Look at your face. Look at mine. Taylor took a step back, shaking her head. No, I'm adopted. Mom told me I was adopted from a chaotic home. She saved me. She didn't save you, Hendricks said, his voice low, realizing the horror of the situation. She stole you. Riley stepped closer, her hand reaching out. We're triplets. Mom always said she lost a baby at birth. She said the doctors told her the third one died. Taylor looked at Riley's outstretched hand. She looked at the defiance in Riley's eyes, the same defiance she felt inside herself, but was never allowed to show. You're lying, Taylor whispered, but she didn't run. Help us, Riley pleaded. Daphne framed our mother. Our mother, Taylor. If you help us find the proof, we can explain everything. Taylor looked toward the house, then back at the siblings she never knew she had. The golden cage of her life suddenly felt very, very small. I saw her, Taylor whispered, the secret spilling out before she could stop it. I saw her put the necklace in the apron pocket. I was on the balcony. Riley and Hendricks stared at her. They had the witness. They had the truth. But they had no idea that revealing it wouldn't just free their mother, it would destroy the billionaire judge who had unknowingly sentenced his own family to ruin. Come with us, Riley said. Taylor Armstrong dropped her sketchbook. She took a deep breath, crossed the invisible line between her world and theirs, and took her sister's hand. Okay. The fluorescent lights of the 24-hour diner hummed with a low electric buzz, a stark contrast to the soft, filtered sunlight of the Armstrong estate. Taylor sat in the booth, her expensive yellow sundress looking alien against the cracked red vinyl. Across from her, Riley and Hendricks stared, their burgers untouched. It was silent save for the clatter of silverware from the kitchen. The resemblance was terrifyingly perfect. Every time Taylor blinked, Riley felt like she was blinking. Every time Hendricks shifted his weight, Taylor mirrored the anxious energy. So, Taylor whispered, her voice trembling as she traced the rim of her water glass. She didn't give me up? No, Riley said, her voice fierce but soft. Mom tells the story every birthday. She went into labor early. It was a chaotic night at the county hospital. She remembers delivering 2 crying babies. Then she remembers a third cry that was suddenly silenced. The doctors told her the third baby had complications and didn't make it. She never saw a body. She never got a certificate. They just told her you were gone. Taylor's eyes filled with tears. Daphne told me my mother was a drug addict who left me in a dumpster. She said she saved me through a private adoption agency. Daphne Armstrong doesn't save people, Hendricks growled, squeezing a packet of ketchup until it burst. She collects things. You were just another accessory to her perfect life. Taylor looked down at her hands, soft manicured hands that had never known a day of hard labor. It makes sense, she admitted, her voice barely audible. I never felt seen. I was always a prop. Stand here, Taylor. Smile like this, Taylor. Don't embarrass us, Taylor. And Dad, I mean Mr. Armstrong. He never really looked at me. He just paid the bills. And Nicholas? Riley asked, leaning in. What about the judge? Taylor shivered. He's cold. He comes over for dinner and it's like sitting with a statue. He and Daphne talk about optics and polling numbers. They don't talk about love. But yesterday. What about yesterday? Hendricks asked. Yesterday when the police were dragging your mom away, Taylor said, looking up. I saw Nicholas looking at her. He looked shaken, like he was waking up from a dream. Daphne saw it too. That's why she was so angry. That's why she insisted on pressing charges immediately. Riley sat back, her mind racing. Daphne isn't just trying to punish a caterer. She's trying to bury the past. She knows. Knows what? Hendricks asked. She knows Mom and the judge have a history. Riley deduced. If Nicholas realizes who Mom is, really realizes it, and then finds out about us, he'll figure it out, Hendricks said, looking at Taylor. If he sees the three of us together. That's exactly why Daphne keeps me hidden away at boarding school, Taylor said. I'm only back for the engagement party. She specifically told me not to come to the courthouse. She said it was too sordid for a girl of my standing. We're going to change that, Hendricks said, a dangerous glint in his eye. You're the witness, Taylor. You saw her plant the necklace. But if I testify against her, Taylor's voice hitched. She's the only mother I've known. She has powerful lawyers. She'll destroy me. She'll cut me off. Riley reached across the table and took Taylor's hand. The skin contact sent a jolt through both of them, a connection 20 years in the making. We don't have money, Taylor, Riley said, her amber eyes burning with intensity. We don't have mansions or diamonds, but we have truth, and we have each other. If you walk into that courtroom, you aren't walking in alone. You're walking in with your family, your real family. Taylor looked at Riley, then at Hendricks. For the first time in her life, the loneliness that had eaten away at her soul evaporated. She wasn't a broken puzzle piece anymore. She was part of a whole. The trial starts tomorrow, Taylor said, straightening her spine. Daphne thinks I'm going to a spa day. I can sneak out. No sneaking, Hendricks said, standing up. We're going to make an entrance. If we're going to take down a billionaire and a high court judge, we do it loud. The courtroom was packed. The air conditioner fought a losing battle against the body heat of reporters, socialites, and curious onlookers. The story of the thief caterer and the billionaire victim was headline fodder, a classic tale of class warfare that the city was eating up. Brooke Valentine sat at the defense table, wearing a borrowed blazer that was slightly too large. She looked small against the towering mahogany of the bench. Her public defender, a harried man named Mr. Gorski, was shuffling papers with trembling hands. All rise, the bailiff bellowed. Judge Nicholas Sinclair entered. The room went silent. He looked impeccable in his black robes, a figure of absolute authority. He sat down, his face unreadable, his eyes sweeping the room. He deliberately avoided looking at the defense table. Docket number 45-9, State versus Valentine, Nicholas intoned, his voice deep and resonating. Charge of grand larceny. Are we ready to proceed? The state is ready, Your Honor, the prosecutor announced. He was a shark in a suit, a man known for getting convictions to boost his own political aspirations. The defense is ready, Your Honor, Mr. Gorski stammered. The trial began with a brutal efficiency. The prosecutor called the security guard, who testified to finding the necklace. He called the floor manager, who testified that Brooke had been acting suspicious and avoiding eye contact. Brooke sat silently, her nails digging into her palms. Lies, she thought. All of it, twisted to fit their narrative. Then the doors at the back of the courtroom opened, and Daphne Armstrong walked in. She was dressed in a modest navy suit, projecting the image of a benevolent victim. She took the stand, dabbing her dry eyes with a silk handkerchief. Ms. Armstrong, the prosecutor asked gently, can you tell the court what happened that night? I was so shaken, Daphne whispered into the microphone. That necklace has been in my family for generations. I took it off for just a moment to wash my hands. When I turned around, it was gone. I ran out and saw her. She pointed a manicured finger at Brooke. She was running away from the powder room. Objection, Gorski squeaked. Speculation. The defendant was working. Overruled, Nicholas said, his voice flat. The witness is describing her observations. Brooke looked up at Nicholas. Look at me, she screamed in her head. Look at me, Nick. You know I don't run. You know I don't steal. You know me. Finally, Nicholas's eyes flickered down. For a brief second, their gazes locked. In that moment, the years melted away. Nicholas saw the amber eyes that used to laugh at his jokes in the law library. He saw the woman who had held his hand when he told her about his abusive father. He saw the woman he had loved more than his trust fund, more than his legacy. His heart hammered against his ribs. It is her. But then he looked at Daphne. He looked at the press gallery, sketching his every move. He looked at the election polls in his mind. He severed the connection. He looked away, his face hardening into stone. "Proceed," Nicholas said coldly. Brooke felt something inside her shatter. That was it. The final betrayal. He recognized her, and he didn't care. He was going to send her to prison to protect his perfect life. "I have no further questions for this witness," the prosecutor smiled. "Mr. Gorski, cross-examination?" Nicholas asked. Gorski stood up, fumbling. Ms. Armstrong, are you sure you didn't just misplace it?" "I am not incompetent," Daphne snapped, her sorrow vanishing instantly. "I know a thief when I see one." "No further questions," Gorski said, defeated. Brooke put her head in her hands. It was over. "The state rests," the prosecutor declared triumphantly. "Mr. Gorski, call your first witness," Nicholas commanded. Gorski leaned over to Brooke. I think we should just plead out, Ms. Valentine. Maybe I can get you 2 years instead of 5. "No," Brooke whispered. "I won't confess to something I didn't do." "We have no witnesses, Brooke. It's your word against a billionaire heiress." "Your Honor," Gorski began, standing up slowly. "The defense has no witnesses at this time. We rest." A murmur of shock went through the crowd. It was a suicide move. Nicholas raised his gavel. "Very well. Closing arguments will commence immediately. I have heard enough to—" Boom! The heavy double doors at the back of the courtroom swung open with such force that they banged against the walls. The sound was like a thunderclap, silencing the murmur of the crowd. "The defense isn't done yet," a voice rang out. Every head in the courtroom turned. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted by the light from the hallway, were 3 figures. At first, the brain struggled to process the image. It looked like a camera trick, a glitch in reality. On the left stood Riley Valentine, her braids pulled back, wearing her sharpest blazer. On the right stood Hendrix Valentine, his mechanic's grease scrubbed clean, wearing a black button-down shirt that strained against his broad shoulders. And in the middle stood Taylor Armstrong. But she wasn't wearing her expensive sundress. She was wearing jeans and a hoodie identical to Hendrix's. She had scrubbed the makeup from her face. She had let her hair loose to match Riley's natural curl. They walked down the center aisle in perfect synchronization. Left, right, left, right. The sound of their footsteps was the only noise in the cavernous room. Daphne Armstrong stood up in the witness box, her face draining of all color. She gripped the railing so hard her knuckles turned skeletal white. "No," she gasped. "No, you're supposed to be at the spa." Nicholas Sinclair froze. He sat paralyzed on the bench, his gavel hovering in midair. He looked at the 3 faces marching toward him. One face, copied 3 times. Brooke's face, but with his jawline, his nose, his fierce, unrelenting stare. The triplets stopped at the bar, the wooden divider separating the gallery from the court. They stood shoulder to shoulder, a wall of undeniable biological evidence. "Who are you?" Nicholas whispered, his voice cracking, the microphone picking up the sound of his composure shattering. Riley stepped forward. "We are the evidence you refused to look for, Your Honor." Hendrix stepped forward. "We are the alibi you ignored." Taylor stepped forward, her voice shaking but growing stronger with every word. "And I am the witness you didn't know existed." "Order!" the prosecutor shouted, standing up. "This is a circus. Remove these kids!" "Sit down!" Nicholas roared at the prosecutor, shocking everyone. He stood up, his robes billowing. He pointed a trembling finger at the trio. State your names. Riley Valentine, Riley said. Hendricks Valentine, Hendricks said. Taylor Valentine, Taylor said, dropping the name Armstrong like a dirty rag. A gasp ripped through the courtroom. Cameras flashed blindingly. Brooke slowly turned around in her chair. Her hands flew to her mouth. She saw Riley. She saw Hendricks. And then she saw the ghost, the baby she had mourned for 20 years, the daughter she had been told was dead. Taylor? Brooke choked out, tears streaming down her face. Taylor looked at Brooke, her real mother, and broke. She ran past the bar, ignoring the bailiffs, and threw her arms around Brooke. "I'm sorry, Mom," Taylor sobbed into Brooke's neck. "I'm so sorry I didn't know." The courtroom erupted into chaos. "Order! Order!" The bailiffs moved to separate them, but Hendricks stepped in front of the defense table, crossing his arms, a physical barrier protecting his mother and sister. "You want the truth, Judge?" Hendricks shouted over the noise. "Here it is! That woman," he pointed at Daphne, who was now trembling in the witness box, "stole your daughter 20 years ago. She bought a baby because she couldn't have one, and she let my mother believe her child was dead." "That's a lie!" Daphne shrieked, her voice shrill and unhinged. "She's lying! She's mentally unstable!" "I saw you!" Taylor turned, her face wet with tears but her eyes blazing. "I was on the balcony, Daphne. I saw you put the necklace in her apron. You told me you hated her. You told me you had to get rid of the trash before the wedding." "Taylor, stop this instant!" Daphne screamed. "I am your mother!" "You are a kidnapper," Riley yelled, slamming her hand on the defense table. "And we demand a DNA test right now! For all three of us." Nicholas felt the room spinning. He sank back into his chair. He looked at the three fierce young adults. He looked at Brooke, clutching the daughter she thought she had lost. He looked at the dates in his head. 20 years ago, the summer they broke up, she had left. She had left pregnant. Triplets. She had triplets. And one was stolen by the woman I am about to marry. The karma wasn't just hitting him, it was dismantling him atom by atom. He had built a fortress of lies and money to keep himself safe, and now the truth was battering down the gates with his own face. "Bailiff," Nicholas said, his voice barely a whisper, but the microphone carried it to every corner of the silent room. "Secure the witness." "Which witness, Your Honor?" the confused bailiff asked. Nicholas slowly lifted his head. His eyes were no longer cold. They were burning with a terrifying realization. "Ms. Armstrong," Nicholas said, looking at his fiancée with pure loathing. "Don't let her leave the building." Daphne's eyes went wide. She looked at Nicholas, then at the triplets, then at the exits. "You can't do this to me, Nick. I made you. My father made you. And my children are unmaking you," Nicholas said, the words tasting like ash and iron in his mouth. He looked at Brooke. "And they are unmaking me." He slammed the gavel down, but this time it didn't sound like a gunshot. It sounded like a bell tolling for the end of his life as he knew it. "Recess," Nicholas rasped. "Chambers, everyone, now." The silence in Judge Nicholas Sinclair's chambers was heavy, suffocating, and absolute. The mahogany walls, usually a symbol of power and stability, now felt like the sides of a coffin closing in on the life Nicholas had built. Brooke sat on the leather sofa, holding Taylor's hand so tightly her knuckles were white. Riley and Hendricks stood behind them, a phalanx of protective rage. Daphne Armstrong stood by the window, flanked by two bailiffs. She wasn't crying anymore. The mask had slipped completely, revealing a cornered, vicious animal. Nicholas sat behind his desk. He looked aged. The vigor of the billionaire judge had drained away, leaving a gray, hollow man. He looked at the three young faces. Then he looked at Brooke. 20 years, Nicholas whispered. "You never told me." "You changed your number," Brooke said, her voice steady but laced with old pain. "You changed your life. You sent a lawyer to give me a check for an abortion, Nick. Do you remember that? You didn't even come yourself. Nicholas flinched as if struck. I thought you took it. I tore it up, Brooke said, and I raised them. I raised them on minimum wage and maximum love. I didn't need your money. I needed a father for them, but you were too busy becoming a god. And you, Nicholas turned his gaze to Daphne. It was a look of nuclear winter. You knew. Daphne laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. Oh, stop being so self-righteous, Nick. You didn't want them. You wanted a career. I did you a favor. I took the complication away. You stole my daughter, Brooke screamed, surging forward, but Hendricks held her back. I saved her, Daphne spat. I gave her the best schools, the best clothes, the best life. Look at her, she's a princess. If I hadn't taken her, she'd be like them. She gestured disdainfully at Riley and Hendricks. Like us? Riley stepped forward, her voice razor sharp. You mean loved? You mean honest? You mean real? I mean poor, Daphne shrieked. I gave her a future. You gave me a cage, Taylor said softly. The room went quiet. Taylor stood up, letting go of Brooke's hand to face the woman who had raised her. You gave me things, Daphne, but you never gave me a home. You just wanted a doll to dress up. And the moment I became inconvenient, the moment I saw who you really were, you were ready to send my real mother to prison to keep your secret, Daphne sneered. I made you, Taylor. No, Taylor turned back to Brooke. She made me. You just stole me. The door opened. 2 detectives entered, looking grim. Judge Sinclair, the lead detective asked. We received your order. Nicholas stood up. He didn't look at Daphne. He looked through her. Daphne Armstrong is to be remanded into custody immediately. The charges are kidnapping, perjury, filing a false police report, and obstruction of justice. You can't do this, Daphne screamed as the detectives cuffed her. My father is Senator Armstrong. I will ruin you, Nicholas. I will bury you. You can try, Nicholas said, his voice dead. But I'm already buried. As they dragged Daphne out, screaming threats of vengeance, the room fell silent again. Nicholas looked at his family. His blood. Brooke, he started, walking around the desk. I can fix this. I have resources. I can set up trusts for all of them. Retroactive child support. Tuition. Whatever you need. He reached for his checkbook. It was his reflex. His solution to every problem for 2 decades. Put it away, Hendricks said. Nicholas froze. Son, I just want to help. Don't call me son, Hendricks said, his voice low and dangerous. You had 20 years to be a father. You don't get to buy the title now just because you got caught. We don't want your money, Judge, Riley added, her eyes cold. We want you to recuse yourself from Mom's case, dismiss the charges with prejudice, and then we want you to stay away from us. Stay away? Nicholas looked panic-stricken. But we're family. Brooke stood up. She walked over to him. She looked at the man she had loved, the man who had become a stranger. You're not family, Nick, she said softly. You're just the donor. And frankly, we can't afford you. She turned to her children. Let's go home. Nicholas watched them leave. 3 identical backs, 1 strong mother. They walked out of his chambers, out of his courthouse, and out of his life, leaving him standing alone in a room full of expensive things that suddenly meant absolutely nothing. The scandal was, predictably, the story of the decade. Billionaire judge's fiancé arrested for kidnapping his own daughter. The headlines were brutal. The photo of the triplets standing in court was plastered on every screen from New York to Tokyo. The black triplets became an overnight symbol of resistance against corruption. For Nicholas Sinclair, it was the end. The Armstrong political machine, trying to distance itself from Daphne's crimes, turned on him. They leaked stories of his coldness, his ruthlessness. His poll numbers for the Supreme Court didn't just drop, they evaporated. He resigned 3 days after the trial. He sat in his penthouse watching the news. He saw footage of Brooke leaving the courthouse, surrounded by reporters. She looked radiant, holding Taylor's hand on one side and Riley's on the other, with Hendricks clearing a path. "Ms. Valentine! Ms. Valentine! Do you have a comment on Judge Sinclair?" a reporter shouted. On the screen, Brooke paused. She looked right into the camera. "Justice was served," she said simply. "Not because of the system, but in spite of it." Nicholas turned off the TV. The silence of the penthouse was louder than the courtroom had been. He poured himself a scotch. It tasted like ash. He had everything he thought he wanted: the money, the status, the freedom. But he realized now, with the crushing weight of hard karma, that he was the poorest man in the city. He picked up his phone. He dialed a number he had dug up from old files. "Hello?" Riley's voice. Sharp, professional. "Riley, it's Nicholas." A pause. "What do you want, ex-Judge Sinclair?" "I want to see her. Taylor, I want to explain." "She doesn't want to see you," Riley said. "She's at our house, a real house, where people cook dinner and talk to each other. She's learning what it's like to be a human being, not a prop." "I can help her," Nicholas pleaded, the desperation leaking into his voice. "She's used to a certain lifestyle. You can't support her on a caterer's salary." "Watch us," Riley snapped. "We're selling the story rights for the movie, Nick. Mom's opening her own event planning firm. Taylor is going to art school in Paris next fall. We're good. We're better than good." "Riley, please. I'm your father." "Biologically?" "Sure," Riley said. "But being a father is a verb, Nick. It's an action, and you haven't done the work." "How do I do the work?" Nicholas asked, tears finally spilling onto his silk tie. "Tell me how to fix it." Riley was silent for a long time. "You start by losing," she said. "You start by feeling what it's like to have nothing. You start by suffering, and maybe in 10 years, if you've actually changed, maybe we'll let you buy us a coffee, but not today." The line went dead. Nicholas dropped the phone. He looked around his glass tower. It felt like a prison. He walked to the window. He looked down at the city. Somewhere out there, in a small, cramped house that smelled like onions and laundry and love, his family was eating dinner without him. He had judged thousands of people, but the harshest verdict had been delivered by his own children. Solitude. 2 years later. The community center in the South Side district was buzzing. It was a Saturday legal clinic, a place where people who couldn't afford the dream team came for help with evictions, petty charges, and family disputes. In the back corner, at a folding table that wobbled, sat a man. He wasn't wearing a bespoke Italian suit. He was wearing a simple gray sweater and slacks from a department store. His hair was completely white now, and lines of fatigue were etched deep into his face. He looked older, tired, but somehow lighter. "Next," Nicholas said. A young woman sat down, looking terrified. "Mr. Sinclair, they said you could help me with my landlord." "Let's take a look," Nicholas said, putting on reading glasses. He didn't have a clerk. He didn't have a gavel. He just had a legal pad and a pen. He worked for 6 hours straight. He didn't check his watch. He didn't think about his golf handicap. He thought about the law, not as a weapon of the rich, but as a shield for the poor. When the clinic closed, he packed up his bag. He walked out into the cool autumn evening. He didn't get into a limousine. He walked to the bus stop. As he stood there, a car pulled up. A sleek, new sedan. The window rolled down. It was Hendricks. Nicholas froze. He hadn't seen his son in 2 years. Hendricks looked older, sharper. He was wearing a suit now, not a mechanic's jumpsuit. "Need a ride?" Hendricks asked. Nicholas swallowed hard. I can take the bus." "Get in, old man," Hendricks said, but there was no venom in it, just a weary acceptance. Nicholas got in. The car smelled like new leather and vanilla. "Mom's doing well," Hendricks said, keeping his eyes on the road. "Her company just catered the mayor's inauguration." "I saw," Nicholas said softly. She looked beautiful. Riley made law review, Hendricks continued. And Taylor. She sent a postcard from Paris. She's dating a painter. She's happy. That's all I wanted, Nicholas lied. He wanted to be there, but he knew he hadn't earned it yet. We heard about what you're doing, Hendricks said. The legal clinic, pro bono, giving away the penthouse proceeds to foster care charities. It's the least I can do, Nicholas said. It is, Hendricks agreed. It's the bare minimum. They stopped at a red light. Hendricks turned to look at him. But it's a start. Nicholas felt a lump in his throat the size of a fist. Do you think she'll ever forgive me? Mom? Hendricks shook his head. She forgave you a long time ago, Nick, not because you deserved it, but because she didn't want to carry the hate. She's free. The question is, can you forgive yourself enough to become someone worth knowing? The light turned green. I'm trying, Nicholas whispered. Keep trying, Hendricks said. He pulled over at the bus stop near Nicholas's small apartment. We're having a graduation party for Riley next month. In the park. It's public. Nicholas looked at him, hope flaring in his chest like a match in the dark. Is that an invitation? It's a notification, Hendricks corrected. If you show up and you stay in the back and you don't try to make it about you, nobody will kick you out. Nicholas nodded. He opened the door. Thank you, Hendricks. See ya, Nick. Nicholas watched the car drive away. He stood on the sidewalk, the wind biting at his face. He had lost the election. He had lost the fortune. He had lost the woman of his dreams. But as he walked toward his small, quiet apartment, Nicholas Sinclair smiled. It was a small, fragile thing, but it was real. He had a date, next month, in the park. It wasn't a verdict. It was a chance. And this time, he wouldn't appeal it. He would live it. The park was alive with the sound of jazz and laughter. The Three Hearts catering tent was overflowing with food, soul food, rich and spicy, the kind Daphne Armstrong would have turned her nose up at, but which the crowd was devouring. Brooke Valentine stood in the center of it all, a queen in a crown of braids. She was laughing, hugging Riley, who was wearing her graduation cap. Taylor was there, video calling from Paris, her face projected on a tablet, blowing kisses. And way in the back, sitting on a park bench under an oak tree, was Nicholas. He held a paper plate of potato salad. He watched them. He didn't approach. He didn't intrude. He simply witnessed the joy he had almost destroyed. Brooke looked up. Her eyes scanned the crowd. They landed on the man on the bench. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. But she didn't look away either. She gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod. Acknowledgement. You are here. You are trying. Keep going. Nicholas nodded back. He took a bite of the potato salad. It was the best thing he had ever tasted. Justice, he realized, wasn't about the gavel striking the wood. It wasn't about punishment. It was about balance. It was about truth. And finally, for the first time in his life, the scales were even. Sometimes the hardest prison to escape is the one you build for yourself. If this story moved you, if you believe in the power of truth and the resilience of family, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. We tell stories that matter, stories about the real struggles, the real victories, and the karma that comes for us all. What would you have done if you were Brooke? Would you have forgiven Nicholas, or would you have left him in the cold? Let us know in the comments below. Share this video with your friends and family. Let's spread the message that no amount of money can buy the truth, and no amount of power can silence a mother's love. Thanks for watching. See you in the next chapter.